Yup, it's here. We've got our first 2 episodes for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the newest Spider-Man show from Marvel Animation. And honestly, it's pretty good. There's a lot that I want to talk about when it comes to the first 2 episodes, but there's also some stuff that I want to talk about before the episodes came out. Everything that was kind of going on around the show with some of the actors, some of the creators, that sort of thing. But before we get into all of that, what's good, guys? It's Dimmy M7. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. You're gonna have a great week, I know it. So when this show was first announced, I'll admit it was kind of confusing as to what this was supposed to be. Was this going to be the Spider-Man in the MCU, like Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Was it going to be someone else entirely? Like, what was this really going to be about? Because the only thing that we actually knew was that this was going to be Spider-Man's story in his first, year or two as Spider-Man. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the original title for this show was supposed to be Spider-Man, freshman year or something like that. But then they ended up changing it to what it is now. Anyways, once we started getting some clips of what the show is going to look like, I'll be the first to admit I wasn't a fan of it. I'm still not a fan of it. Now look, no disrespect to the animators whatsoever. I'm sure they worked very, very hard on this, but I'm just not a big fan of this animation style that they decided to go with for this show. It's very clear that they wanted to make this a whole, bringing a comic book to life sort of thing, but it just doesn't work. I mean, we already got that sort of idea with the Spider-Verse movies, and it looks so much better. The way that they decide to do it here for this show just looks really stiff and blocky. I don't know. The style just isn't for me personally, but I've gotten used to it. It is what it is. Now, as far as the episodes themselves, I'm not going to do a whole play-by-play of what actually happens in both episodes. I'm just going to kind of briefly gloss over it. Also, I should say this right now, I will be spoiling what happens in the episode. So if you don't want to be spoiled, if you want to watch it, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Okay, so the first episode is when Peter basically gets his powers. He goes to the school that he's going to be starting, really smart and whatnot. And we see freaking Doctor Strange fighting a symbiote. He does that whole ring portal thing. He pops out of there. So he's from another dimension. You know that because Peter looks up, he's like, who's that magic guy? Anyways, through that same portal, we get a spider. It lands on Peter. We all know what happens next. It fast forwards just a couple of months where Peter is used to his powers and even has his own homemade suit on. And look, I have to give credit where credit is due. I really like this version of Peter Parker. I really like how he's written. Again, once you've seen or read a couple of versions of Peter Parker, you already have an idea of who he is. But I do like that this version does have a very genuine sense of optimism, a very go-getter attitude, but also a guy that really does care about the smaller people in his community, which I'll get to later. The show also does pull exact parallels from the MCU Spider-Man. I mean, literally, our first introduction to Peter Parker in Captain America Civil War is literally remade shot for shot, only with this version of Peter Parker and this version of characters. Speaking of this version of characters, I do want to preface that a lot of the characters that we've come to know through the comics and movies are definitely altered here, and I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I mean, look, if you've seen any of the clips that have come out before these episodes, then you already know, Harry's here. His skin color's different. Norman Osborn, different. I mean, we even see Dr. Connors, who's not a man, she's a woman, and she's black. And I didn't have a problem with that at all. I think that's pretty cool. And also, I'm not going to talk about the whole woke comments that the Peter Parker voice actor said. It's really stupid. God, I really do feel like the meaning of the word woke has changed so much from what it was originally meant. But I digress. Back to the show. Peter has a crush on someone that used to babysit him. He wants to prove that he's not that kid anymore, that he's grown up, he's smart, he's a man out here. Peter becomes very good friends with someone named Nico, and she's actually hilarious because, you know how I mentioned earlier that Peter has his crush on someone that used to babysit him? Nico's like, hey, if you don't nab her, I might. I'm like, damn, go off. Do what you gotta do. But in these first 2 episodes, we do get to see Peter really struggle with balancing these 2 lives that he has, something that, again, has become iconic with the character. Peter gets a paid internship working at Oscorp, and you already see right away that he's struggling to help save New York while also being able to impress Norman Osborn. Remember how I mentioned earlier that there was that shot-for-shot remake of our introduction to Peter Parker in Civil War? Well, instead of Tony Stark being there with Aunt May on the couch, it was actually Norman Osborn here. And to say the least, I think it's going to be very fascinating to see how his relationship with Norman evolves, especially after the ending of the second episode, which if you watched it, you'll know that Norman finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. I mean, I guess if you saw the trailer for the show, you already knew that this was coming and you already know that Norman tries to help him in some way, making him some suits. But it's that relationship between them that I'm very interested to see how it plays out. There's a moment in, I believe, the second episode where Peter basically stops this robbery, gets some cash back to this guy that owns like a pizza shop. And I loved it because, again, it's such a small thing in the robber was all like, listen, I'm really, really sorry. It's just I lost my job. And how Peter reacts to this is straight up textbook Spider-Man. He's like, listen, let them go. You know, they made a mistake. Just please don't do it again. Don't make me regret this. There was genuine empathy there, and I loved it. The action sequences that we end up getting in these first 2 episodes are nice. There's this one part where Peter's like fighting this fire guy like in this abandoned building, and it's actually hilarious because the fire guy was burning down this building just to make like a profit from it, but it ended up being the wrong building. I thought that was really cool. The fight ends up going to like this pet store, and Peter's like trying to save all these different animals from getting burned up. It was really cool. It was animated well, even though the style I still don't like. But yeah, for our first 2 episodes for this brand new Spider-Man show, I like it. I'm on board. I mean, look, we have had some really great Spider-Man shows in the past. I mean, obviously you've got the classic animated Spider-Man show from the 90s. And then you got my personal favorite, The Spectacular Spider-Man. And here's the craziest part. Before these 2 episodes even came out, it was announced, I think yesterday or even the day before, that Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man was renewed for not just a 2nd season, but a 3rd season. That is almost unheard of for any TV show, especially a show that didn't even have its first 2 episodes available. So if this show really is that good, I'm hype. But yeah, that's all I have to say about it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about these first 2 episodes. Let's talk about it. Let's geek out together. And until next time, peace.